Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of RevOps Demos That Don't Suck. My name is Matthew Volm, CEO and founder of RevOps Co-op. We have a global community of 13,000, almost 14,000 folks from all around the globe. And one of the things that we love to do is sit down with leading products in the revenue technology space so that we can get a sense of who they are, what they do, and how they deliver value to folks in revenue operations. And we do that in a way that is in our title, that does not suck, we promise. And so today we're going to be chatting through the BoostUp forecasting platform with Chad Cameron, who is the head of solution consulting over at BoostUp. And BoostUp is a forecasting platform for any and every kind of revenue team. They've got customers all over the globe, folks like Cloudflare, Udemy, and Sisense. But I will stop there and actually, Chad, let you tell us more about yourself personally, and then anything you want to add to the BoostUp introduction that I missed before I start peppering you with other questions.
All good, all good. And I appreciate you letting me run you through this. But yeah, my name's Chad Cameron, and I do run solution consulting here at BoostUp. A little bit of background on me. I've actually been in the sales tech, kind of RevOps tech space for a little over a decade. So I've seen a lot, and I've worked with everything from your beginning startup all the way up to Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies, and really helped them along the way. And BoostUp really enticed me as a nerd and enticed me enough to actually come work for them. And really what we're trying to do, I think you hit the nail on the head, right, is we're trying to provide good revenue forecasting and revenue analytics solutions for any and every revenue team. And that is really a big differentiator for us. So what I'm going to do for you today is walk you through just a couple of high-end pieces of the platform, set this up a little bit with just a couple of slides. I promise I'm not going to beat you to death with slideware today, and then we'll get into the product and show you some pretty interesting things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So let's get going, and really the way we like to frame ourselves up, we are a revenue command center. It's not just a forecasting solution. We want to be the one-stop shop where you go to really answer all those hairy, scary questions. And with that, as you mentioned, we do have quite a few really interesting customers that we've worked with, public companies, smaller companies, everything in between. And really one of the interesting things about this is all these businesses are very different. They look at revenue differently, and we're able to support them all due to really how we look at things and how we built our tech stack. And it's really a modern tech stack with AI embedded all the way at the bottom. And with a lot of the legacy vendors out there or kind of legacy technology, because there's so much manual work, you don't get the visibility you need to really drive accountability or results. And what we've done is we've embedded AI into the tool. We've built a modern infrastructure that actually allows us to give you excellent visibility to drive those excellent results. And there's really three portions of this platform. One is the forecasting side of things. Obviously, that is the big thing for a lot of companies out there, is calling that accurate number. I'm going to walk you through how we do that at BoostUp. There's also a deal inspection and coaching side of things, how we can get in there and enable those sellers and managers to do a better job around executing on deals and running those processes that have been designed for them. And then, of course, some really deep revenue insights and some interesting things we can do on reporting to help you through that function of your business, I could say. Now, last slide before I jump into the product, and this is really our big differentiators. One is going to be that we can support any forecast use case. Revenue models have changed in the last 10, 15 years, and it's no longer just a simple bookings forecast. I hit closed one, I can count it. There's a lot of companies out there doing consumptive type forecasting. Maybe you need to do like a PLG type forecast where we're forecasting how many net new users. The big thing here is any revenue model, any hierarchy structure, and any forecast metric. We can actually put those up, and even multiples for some companies. Because AI is embedded, we also really boast superior accuracy, and it's all about getting the data in the right place that makes the difference there. And fastest time to value on the market. With our self-serve tools, we can actually do some pretty interesting things with getting the right things in place for revenue teams to really get after what they need to get after. So with that, I'm not going to belabor this any further. I'm going to make this not suck, and we're going to get into some product here. But with those differentiators that I spoke with, one of the other things we want to do is we really want to enable workflow for people. So I'm going to think of this through the lens of maybe a CRO, maybe an ops leader. It really works the same way from this perspective. But one of the things we can do is not only put a lot of data in front of somebody to answer questions, but we want to be proactive and alert them. So one of the things I do is I start my day in Slack. I don't know how it works for you, but with that, we can actually set thresholds and limits to alert you when something's going on. So right here, I've actually got an alert saying that, hey, my pipeline has changed significantly. And if I needed to inspect it, it's one click away. We can also do that from a forecast perspective. If we have significant forecast change, I can one click dive into the product and actually find out what's happening here. And as I clicked in, what I'm looking at is our unified forecasting page where I can really look at any hierarchy. This is a very simple sales hierarchy here. I also have, you can see these other segments of the business where I can do a simple user hierarchy. For instance, if I were to toggle over to an ops user, here's that sales team I was looking at earlier, but I can also maybe look at through a completely different contextual lens at renewals or customer success. And for those more advanced use cases, we had some customers give me some permission to fudge some data based on their structure, but we can actually restructure this so we're not just looking at users, but those users may own accounts. Those accounts may have opportunities that roll up to those accounts, and we may even be looking at, in this case, more of a consumptive use case where we're looking at workloads and give people the ability to really track and forecast at any level of that hierarchy. No one else really in the market is able to even come close to that. But on top of that, you completely have control over what columns show up here, what forecast models, and how to put it. I've got 3 models here, a bottoms-up model. I've got a linear weighted model, something that's typically happening in Excel for most companies. We've automated that and dropped into the product. We've even got an AI forecast, which is a culmination of multiple models that gives us an idea where we think they're going to land based on historical behavior, what's going on in deals, and how they're performing right now. We'll even explain it, tell you why we think they're going to hit, what they've booked so far, what we expect them to convert, as well as what we expect them to create and close or pull forward between today and the end of the quarter. So we're even found a solution for that unborn or non-existent pipeline as part of our prediction. And because this is done on a deep cohort analysis, these conversion rates, these different kind of metrics we're tracking are going to be different at different points in the hierarchy. Not everyone's business is created the same, even in a same organization. In order to keep our accuracy, and what we call accurate or usably accurate, is plus or minus 5 to 10% by week 4 of a quarter. That's where we will say it's usable enough. Most of our customers are running much higher accuracy than that as they use the product, but that's the first time we'll call it usable enough to actually turn it on. So a lot of things we can do to give you the ability to drill in, understand how our forecast is changing and moving, and even inspect that underlying data. But thinking about that initial use case where I was alerted of a forecast change, what happens there? The RevOps leader or a CRO or whomever is going to dig in, find that deal that pushed whatever it may be as they drill into these deals and reach out to either the VP or the rep to say, hey, what's going on here? And that's where the deal inspection and coaching really comes in. Reaches out to that VP, and we'll focus on this deal right up top here, this Taggart Enterprise deal, because it's right up top. This is the one that has now slipped out of our forecast, and there's some interesting things going on here. One, we're getting some predictions based on AI again that, hey, if nothing changes in this deal, it's going to slip. Also, we see it's not very healthy. We'll jump into that here in a second. But I like to start with process, again, because I'm a little bit of an operations nerd myself. We need to make sure that we're following process, and we have Medic as a process for opportunities in this case. So I'm going to start with that to see if my people are doing what we're asking them to. And looking at this really briefly in this pop-out experience, I can see a couple gaps. One, I don't have an economic buyer. 2, I don't have a champion. So there's definitely some challenges here. The cool thing is if we found that too, we could just type that in, enter it. It's actually going to push into Salesforce in real time. We do have a real-time bidirectional sync with CRM. So all that data is showing up in real time, but definitely some hair on this deal. taking a deeper dive and looking at that health score, that engagement risk score, you'll see some interesting things. What we're doing here is we're actually looking at this through a behavioral lens. In other words, what are the behaviors that are driving risk here? And in this case, for this type of deal, we're not managing our Salesforce data appropriately. Our meetings are not looking as frequent as they typically are. We're even getting some negative sentiment coming in this communication. Now, the way we're able to do this is once again fairly unique. We're actually plugged directly into your communication systems. We're actively mining those communication systems and then leveraging AI to accurately map those things to the correct account and opportunity, and then doing further analysis to figure out what's happening here. But what this does for leaders and ops users is not only are we going to tell you what the behavior is, we can allow you to inspect to gain context. So if I need to understand what's going on with any of these communications, either from the buyer or out to the buyer from the seller, with a single click, I can see exactly what they're saying. We'll also highlight keywords, phrases, pulse sentiment, so on and so forth to help you understand what's happening there. Now, in this case, we can see we've had some competitors discuss and some objections and some positive moments. But the other thing I think is really interesting is because we're going direct to the source, what we're seeing here is everyone we're communicating with, whether or not they exist in Salesforce. Emily here does, no one else is in your CRM, but we're still able to accurately capture that communication. We'll also tell you who's doing the selling on your end. Now, in context of this, where we're missing a champion and an economic buyer and the customer's gone dark, one of the things I'm seeing right away, we've got a bunch of junior people here. Also, if I toggle over to my selling team, once again, a lot of junior people here. So if I am this ops leader, or if I am this sales leader, or whoever's doing this analysis, I can look through those topics, what they're discussing, notice who's talking, and say, this might be a good point where we can pull an executive alignment play to hopefully get a meeting or at least get the customer talking back to us, because that's not happening. The real power here is this is done in just a few minutes asynchronously rather than jumping on the phone and playing 20 questions with your rep. So pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah, you mentioned integrating directly with obviously the CRM and Salesforce, but then direct integration with the email provider, the communication provider. Is that right? So you're not relying on like activity data from the CRM in order to get like a view into activity. You're actually integrated with like the sending platform.
Yeah, we are going direct to the source for these things. And really, again, the goal there is to get as much data in the right place as possible. The joke I love to use is CRM has unfortunately turned into kind of the Facebook version of your work life. All the good stuff goes in there, none of the bad stuff, especially when it comes to communications. So if we're able to mine that actively and then accurately map it, which we do this with about a 98% fidelity, that means AI is accurately mapping these things for 98% of all the communications we handle, and we have some hierarchical tie-breaking rules to handle the last 2% of communications. We're able to get things in the right place and then again run accurate analysis. What needs to happen from like an actionable insights perspective to get a deal back on track?
Yeah. You mentioned the bidirectional sync with the CRM, so you can add, for example, the missing medic fields in BoostUp that'll push into Salesforce. You also show those examples of contacts or examples of people you were communicating with where you did not have them in your CRM. Are you able to say create new contacts or associate those contacts with deals in the CRM through BoostUp as well and do some other things?
So not directly through BoostUp, and we've done this for a very important reason, right? Because typically what you get out of, let's say, email communications is very limited and typically not enough to create a contact role for most companies, right? We get first name, last name, email, typically is all we're getting. Occasionally we'll get a title if they have it in their signature line, but we're not really going to get anything above and beyond that. So what we've done with our customers is, because we are tracking and capturing these things, we set a regular cadence with them, or we give them basically all a big flat file of all the contacts we've seen as net new contacts and all of the related information we can gather. And then they'll typically run that through some type of enhancement or scrubbing process to get those things in the right place. We were very thoughtful on not auto creating them, because the last thing we would want is either incomplete or bad data in somebody's CRM. Those are the exact problems we're trying to solve. So
Yeah.
Very thoughtful
Yeah.
there.
It's one of those things. You gotta be thoughtful about that because otherwise duplicates and a lot of other things can start to run rampant. And that's the last
Yeah,
thing. That's the last thing you want.
absolutely. One other kind of question here though is, so let's say I can get this deal, I can, solve the problems I've got there. We've got that executive alignment play running. What if for this user that's not enough, right? And we need to pull in another deal to hit our number. One of the interesting things we have here with BoostUp is the ability to get in there and pull different data sources. For instance, with this, in this instance, what I can do here is look at something like maybe my support tickets that are coming out of Zendesk, right along with account value that's pulling out from Salesforce. So one of the things we can do here is plug into things like data warehousing or other systems and pull all that data in. We'll handle all of the ETL and data management on our end, and we can target somebody like this who's got a very high potential but very low support tickets. So they are seemingly happy. But with all of our BI dashboards, we also still give you the ability to interact with the underlying data, which is something that's pretty interesting here. So we can actually go in and type in, hey, I'm going to target these for 50K. There you go, add another zero. But put that in there and actually push that into CRM or whatever that main data source is and get things going right off the rip. Unlimited number of reports and dashboards can be created, and they can be created across data sources. In this case, these are two data sources that don't always play very well together, but because of the AI running on our infrastructure, we can create those relationships and give you the ability to visualize things side by side. No more of that classic CRM or Salesforce report. Is it with, or is it and, or is it and with? It's just a bunch of simple drop downs where we're going to handle all those relationships for you. And of course, there's plenty of other things we can do. The classic waterfalls, your Sankey progression charts, visualize risk across stages. There's so much data that we can provide, but the beauty of it is that whatever you're trying to view, whatever those questions you're trying to answer, it can all be done in a single pane of glass, giving you the ability to do this for any segment of your business, as well as interact with that data.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned, we talked about obviously, so CRM integration, you mentioned being able to integrate directly with email providers. So I assume Salesforce, HubSpot, popular integrations on the CRM side.
Call recordings is another really big one.
Yeah.
So like your gongs, your choruses, mind tickles, call A, I've seen quite a few of them. But really anything that generates a transcript, we'll actually integrate with that as well and pull that in to kind of better understand what's happening in deals and accounts.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe the list is shorter for maybe the things you don't integrate with than you do. It sounds like basically you like to, whether it's data warehouse, the CRM, integrate where you can at the source, and then do a lot of the joining and complicated data stuff within your platform, rather than relying on what I've seen from other folks sometimes is, right, it's, oh yeah, as long as you pipe everything into the CRM, then we're totally good and we'll just pull it all directly from there. It sounds like you guys are like, no, we're gonna integrate at the source. We'll pull it all in and then we'll work our magic right behind the scenes to serve up what you're seeing here.
Yeah, no, that is exactly correct. And again, being very thoughtful at how we created this system is we didn't want to put people in a box. There's a lot of people out there that'll use words like rigor or structure, or really that's just a kind of a sneaky way to say, hey, we need to change your process or the way you do things in order to fit it into the box that is our system. We really designed ours to be flexible and configurable enough that you don't have to change what you're doing. What we're trying to do is better enable what you're doing today. So when it comes to like data sources, there's the table stake stuff like your CRM, of course, but there's also additional data sources depending on the use case that you may want to pull things in. For instance, in a lot of these consumptive forecasts or these kind of consumptive use cases, we're looking at product data, we're looking at usage data, we're looking at billing data, and that stuff doesn't typically live in CRM, and getting it into CRM is a big pain. So we don't want you to have to go through that pain. We want to get it where it lives today. We typically take path of least resistance. Where you have the data today, what's the easiest way we can get to that data with the lowest amount of lift on your end?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And we talked about, I guess, or we hit on this, I guess, a little bit up front, but one of the questions I think a lot of folks, traditionally where forecasting started was the standard kind of sales-led motion of folks opening opportunities, working those through their stages and their pipeline and getting them to closed one. Now there's obviously a lot of different types of sales motions, right? Whether it's sales-led, product-led, a mix of both. You've got expansions, you've got renewals. How do you all handle those differences in motions? And as a platform, are you able to accommodate things like usage-based, consumption-based, freemium, like PLG,
Yeah.
sales-led, some combination of all of the above? Like, how do you handle that within the platform?
So really, it comes down to configuring the right structure and workflow for the user base that's going to do that type of forecast. And it may be a blend, or you may have sellers that are doing both kind of a contracted bookings type forecast as well as some type of consumptive or PLG forecast for their region. Really, the way we've looked at it is we believe that the traditional forecasting methodologies, whether they be in the CRM or whether they be in more of a legacy forecasting tool, it's only looking at people and it's bound to that kind of Salesforce style Oracle database structure. It doesn't always make sense for different use cases. For instance, we talked a little bit about a consumptive use case, but let me actually pull up another one. This is what we typically see with kind of renewals teams. They want to look at things a little bit differently. And again, they're going to typically need a few different data sources coming into them. It's not going to be just about, hey, how much do I have in my commit? Because they may not even look at things like that. But what they're doing is they're not typically opportunity focused. They're typically going to be more account focused. And in those accounts, opportunities are secondary. What they really want to understand is how many, what's the usage looking, or what's the renewal looking like at the product level. And then under that product level, you may get into those individual opportunities that will affect that product. So we've done some interesting things to almost flip the relationship structure on its head without necessarily having to mess with the source data. But the other piece of the puzzle here is what we want to do for these types of use cases is, one, give them the data that's relevant. So we're going to pull things like usage and NPS scores and monthly active users. This stuff doesn't often live in Salesforce. It's usually in disparate systems. But being able to pull that up and put it in line where it makes sense for them to, one, target the right people for outreach or engagement, or two, give them another bit of data when they're making a judgment on their forecast call. But it's not just structuring the data, it's also how are you going to call that data. You're typically not just going to throw a number down. What you're really trying to understand from a CS side of things typically is really net dollar retention, right? How many dollars am I keeping? And that's what we've got represented here in our total forecast, as well as a percentage. But what's really driving this is these individual users, both at the account level or even potentially at the product level or at the opportunity level, putting a forecast in of how many dollars am I renewing, how many dollars am I expanding, and how many dollars am I churning. And then we're actually, in this case, for this customer, they're putting in those three numbers because that's the way they think and that's the way they track things. It doesn't make sense for them to, or their brains, it's hard for them to say, hey, what's my total forecast? Because digging into this detail is necessary, especially down at the product level. So what we do is we actually have them make these three calls, and then we aggregate it for a total forecast, and we're having them do that. So again, this is one example. And really, to get to the product question initially is, how do we do this? It's all about the flexibility of the platform to move data around and put it in the right place, or even pull in additional data sources to give people the, what they need to, one, call a number, but also provide the workflow for them to actually get the correct numbers in there that make sense for the way, one, they run their business, and two, they think about their business altogether.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I like, again, it's called the same functionality across, like you said, for renewals versus new business, like we were looking at below, but you're meeting the user where they are and putting things in terms that they can, I don't know, call it recognize, or the way that they do work. And CS does work differently than the sales team. So yeah, I like that. And I like being able to flip the relationship structure, like you mentioned, looking at
Hmm.
things account based on down and then at the product or even opportunity level versus again, other folks on the sales team may have a very different view, maybe laser focused on opportunities, right?
On the big benefit that our customers have seen, and I think you've probably dealt with this struggle as well, is you're trying to roll out a global forecast. And the CS team is probably using, at the simplest level, like different amount fields than the sales team is, right? But they're also like completely running a different business, right? They're very account focused. Sales team is very opportunity focused. So it's almost like you're trying to shoehorn them in and say, okay, for this to work in our system, I need you now to completely change your process and how you look at your customers. And we're going to get you opportunity focused. And by the way, you're going to have to use this field, even though we did all this creation to make this right for you. You're now going to have to translate it and put it into this other field. And then we're going to roll it up. And if there's any overlays, we'll have to do some manual manipulation on the back end to clear those out. But those are all problems that should be solvable by technology and not necessarily a way solvable by you adjusting your process. And that's the
Yeah.
way we look at it.
Yeah, I like that. The process comes first. Technology should support that, not the other way around. And on the integration side, you showed Slack before. Do you also have a Microsoft Teams integration?
Teams is coming. Unfortunately, Slack is the gorilla. Teams is not here
Okay.
as of yet, just being transparent. The other kind of piece of the Slack integration that's pretty interesting, not only can we push information into Slack, but if you're using Slack as a way to communicate with customers, this is speaking around customer success, that's pretty common. We can actually also pull in those communications and mine them as well when it comes to maybe better understanding how healthy those existing customers are. Those are definitely some things we can do to help you out from that perspective as well.
Yeah, that's great. Because yeah, I was thinking back to some of the views you were showing before on, for example, like touch points and engagements you've had with a customer or an account over the last X number of days, right? If you have a shared Slack channel set up with your customers, chances are you're going to be doing all of your communications, nearly all of them in there. So you may not have any email activity with them over the last 3 weeks, but that does not necessarily mean that you're disengaged or that they're disengaged. So I like being able to,
Yeah.
again, it goes back to what you were mentioning before about integrating at the source and why that's important.
Yeah, that is something we do every day at our companies. We're always constantly talking to our customers via Slack. In fact, you probably saw my head moving a couple of times through this because I'm getting messages from our customers. I'm on those threads as well. But yeah, it's a constant communication. But again, the way that we look at it is, one, we need the data to understand customers, but from an internal process perspective, we want to be fast because it's so easy to make changes and do things in BoostUp that if you can ping us on Slack and we can handle it in a few minutes, might as well handle it now.
Yep. And talking about the customer success side of things, and I think you mentioned up front speed to value or how quickly someone
Yeah.
can get to value. So for someone out there who wants to either get started or give BoostUp a try, like what does the implementation process look like? Is there a way that they can try things out on their own? Do they need to go through a salesperson? How quick can they get set up? Because again, you're talking about integrating with all these different sources, and at least like product looks like it's very capable of doing a lot of very complicated things. So yeah, what does
Mhm.
the time to value, speed to value, implementation setup process look like?
Yeah, there's really two pieces of the speed to value. One, of course, you're hitting it is the initial implementation. We're fastest on the market today from an initial implementation. Our average is about a 4 to 6 week implementation. That's end-to-end integrations, configuration, rollout to end users. It's pretty darn fast. To give you some real-world examples, we set up one of our customers' talk desk, and they're about 400 sales users and a pretty hefty ops team globally. We set them up in a week and a half. And that is a multi-billion-dollar organization. So understand we can run pretty darn quickly if we really need to. So that's the implementation things. If you want to try that out, reach out to a seller. We don't have a one-click get started because, again, there's a lot of data involved and we need to make sure we have context there. So reach out to a seller. But the other piece of the puzzle there when it comes to time to value is about the self-serve configuration tools built into the system. As if I were to log in as an ops user here, I have full control to really change anything and everything in the system down here in the settings section. And really what this does for you, right? And I'll take a customer example as well, where we had a customer that we transitioned off of a competitive product. I'm not going to mention who, but they wanted to make a change that was fairly significant but needed. And really what happened is, okay, I can't control this myself, so I'm going to put in a ticket. They put in the ticket, they waited in a queue for a few days. Pro services got engaged. They said, okay, I think we know how we can do this, but in order for us to do this, we need you to make these 5 changes in CRM. I said, okay. So they went through their internal CRM sprint, made those changes, got it in there, reached back out to customer success. Customer success made the changes, and well, a little over a month later, they finally had what they needed. We onboarded them into BoostUp shortly after this, and it turns out that change didn't do what they wanted to, so they needed to revert all that work. They did it in 14 minutes.
14 minutes versus a month. Yeah, that's, I don't know, pretty drastic time difference there.
Yeah. And again, that's a real customer story. And just one other way to look at kind of time to value. It's not just get up and running initially, but as your business changes, as the market changes, as something else happens and you need to pivot, how fast can you make that pivot?
And then on the other side of at least the talks about ROI, return on investment. So there's obviously the value equation, and then there's the pricing or the investment. So what can you share on either pricing or how you all charge? Is it a per seat sort of model? Is it something else that drives things on the investment side? What can you share there?
A very traditional SaaS model is what we work with here. Per user, per month, billed annually. Pretty
Yeah.
simple from that perspective. We're
Makes sense.
priced about dead center with competitive products, and we're happy to talk more in depth as we get scope and understanding where things go.
And then I know one of the, obviously, so the platform's capable of a lot. We talked about all the different types of integrations that you have and support, all the different forecasting like models, methodologies that you can support, sales-led, product-led, free trial motions, usage, consumption-based. So a lot goes into the product. You even mentioned some of the things with speed to value, right? That you're able to do better than competitors. But if you were to pick one thing, and I guess this will be my last question, one thing and just one thing that truly sets BoostUp apart from the manual way of forecasting and spreadsheets to other competitive products that are out there, what's the one differentiator that you would say really puts
We named those 3 at the beginning, and really they're all this is the nerd's opinion. Don't tell my marketing team. It's all driven by the flexibility of the platform, right? We can support any use case because we're so flexible. We can give you that superior time to value because, again, we're not asking you to make changes. We're going to make the changes. We're flexible there. And of course, when it comes to being able to look at what you want to look at, again, or those kind of deep analytics, it's about our flexibility to ingest any data source and put it up really in any way you want. So flexibility is the big one.
Yeah, makes sense. And hearing you mention that, like a lot of times there's trade-offs associated with that flexibility, meaning though if you want flexible stuff, then we got to handle all the configuration changes in the future, or it's going to take you a long time to get implemented or onboarded. But it sounds like none of those trade-offs need to be made with BoostUp. You offer the flexibility, you're able to get folks up and running very quickly, and then you put the power in the hands of the ops user so that they can continue to manage and maintain the tool, the system based on their business. And as their business needs change and evolve and the way they go to market changes and evolves, they're able to continue to manage things on their own. And then obviously leverage the BoostUp team for support and help as they go along.
Yep, absolutely. And we consider ourselves, we call our customer success managers, they're really more like a technical account manager. And we consider them like as embedded resources. In other words, if you need something, you can Slack us and we're going to get on it. And we turn those things around typically in under a day. Yeah, the flexibility, a lot of people get scared of that because, oh, that's going to be a lot of work. But again, with the kind of modern infrastructure that's powering the system, the AI that runs on that infrastructure, and of course the embedded team on our end, you don't get those drawbacks.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, if for anyone who's watching this that either wants to learn more, give things a try, what's the best way for them to get in touch with a seller or somebody on your team?
Yeah, just head to our website at boostup.ai. More than happy to help you out there. There's lead forms, there's tons of resources, there's a blog, tons of product videos and tours and things like that. You can hit us up there at boostup.ai, or feel free, if you want something more specific, just to email me directly. It's chad.cameron@boostup.ai. I'm happy to help you wherever I can.
Love it. All right, my friend. Well, Chad, thank you for giving us a run through the platform. It looks awesome. I can see the value for every revenue operator out there, and I'm sure folks watching appreciate it as well. So thank you, my friend.
I appreciate the time. It's always good to chat with y'all.